Caught in a storm with no one left to trust, a struggling single mom accepts a ride from a mysterious stranger. She never imagined he was a millionaire CEO hiding from his own pain. What begins as a simple act of kindness turns into a journey of healing, hope, and unexpected love. The rain fell in sheets that evening, washing the streets clean of people and noise. On the edge of a small town called Pine Grove, a woman named Harper clutched her son Leo's hand as they huddled under a failing bus stop roof. Her jacket was soaked through, her boots worn at the soles. She had no plan, no money, and no place to sleep. But she had Leo, and that was enough to keep moving. Cars sped past without a glance. Harper stuck out her arm, desperate. Then, through the storm, a sleek black SUV rolled to a stop. Inside sat a man with sharp eyes and an unreadable expression. He hesitated only a moment before unlocking the passenger door. "Do you need a ride?" he asked. Harper stared, uncertain, but nodded. "Please, just somewhere dry for my son." That man was Victor Langston, a reclusive CEO who hadn't been seen in public in over a year. As Harper and Leo climbed inside, unaware of who he truly was, none of them knew that this rainstorm was only the beginning of a far deeper journey, for all three. Victor Langston rarely drove himself. His assistants, chauffeurs, and managers typically shielded him from mundane tasks. But tonight, on a rare escape from the towering glass walls of his corporate empire, he found solace in the silence of the road. Driving calmed the storm in his mind. The woman he had picked up looked exhausted, her clothes clinging to her like a second skin. She kept glancing at her child, maybe 6 years old, tucking him in close, whispering to keep him calm. Victor offered a dry blanket from the back seat, one he usually kept for emergencies. "Thank you," she said softly, wrapping it around her son's shoulders. Her voice trembled, not just from the cold but from something deeper. Victor didn't press her for details. Instead, he asked, "Where are you headed?" Harper hesitated. "Honestly, anywhere safe. We were supposed to stay with someone tonight, but it didn't work out." He understood in spoken pain. He'd felt it every day since losing his wife and daughter in a car accident 2 years ago. The emptiness never faded, it just dulled around the edges. And something in Harper's eyes mirrored that ache. Victor made a quiet decision. "I have a guest house on my property," he said. "It's dry, warm, and empty. You're welcome to stay the night, just the night. No expectations." Harper stiffened, protective. "Why would you help us?" Victor looked back at the road, blinking away memories. "Because someone once helped me when I needed it most. Consider it paying that forward." As they drove deeper into the countryside, Harper began to relax just enough to notice that Leo had stopped shivering and was quietly dozing against her side. Outside, the rain intensified. Inside that SUV, 3 lives were already beginning to shift. The SUV rolled to a slow stop at the edge of a sprawling estate, tucked behind tall pines and a wrought iron gate that creaked open automatically. Harper's eyes widened as the mansion came into view, a majestic blend of stone and glass with soft exterior lights cutting through the misty night. It was the kind of place she'd only seen in magazines. Leo stirred in her arms, blinking at the sight. Victor parked beside a smaller structure near the main house, more modest but still elegant. The guest house stood 2 stories high, its wooden porch inviting despite the weather. Victor stepped out first, grabbing an umbrella from the trunk before opening the passenger door. Harper hesitated. "Is this really okay?" Victor nodded. "It's yours for the night. There are fresh linens, a working kitchen, and heat. Take it." Inside, the guest house was warm and immaculate. The scent of cedar and lemon cleaner greeted them. Victor showed her around briefly, pointing out the bedrooms, the fireplace, and the emergency phone. "I'll be just across the yard in the main house," he said, turning to leave. "If you need anything, press 1 on the phone. Don't worry, I won't intrude." Harper stood by the fireplace, clutching Leo close, watching Victor disappear into the rain. As the door shut behind him, she felt a strange mix of relief and confusion. What kind of man opens his home to strangers in the middle of the night? She walked through the space, lighting a lamp near the sofa, her heart still hammering. She had trusted a man she knew nothing about, but somehow she hadn't felt afraid. Leo curled up under the blanket, smiling for the first time all day. "Is this where we live now?" he asked sleepily. Harper knelt beside him and smiled through the sting in her eyes. "Just for tonight, sweetheart." But even she couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was already unfolding. That night, Harper didn't sleep easily. The guest bed was soft, the blankets plush, and Leo snuggled safely beside her, but her thoughts spun in loops. She kept replaying the look in Victor's eyes, cool on the surface but with a depth that hinted at buried pain. She'd seen eyes like that before, her own in the mirror. Somewhere across the property, Victor stared out a window in his study, nursing a half-empty glass of scotch. He'd expected to feel regret for bringing strangers into his private world, but instead he felt something he hadn't in months: peace. It was strange, unnerving even. He opened a drawer and pulled out a photo of his wife and daughter. The frame was worn from the number of times he'd held it. "You'd like her," he whispered. "She's strong." Back in the guest house, Harper tiptoed to the kitchen and brewed a cup of tea. The silence was heavy but not hostile. She found herself inspecting the details of the house, the carefully chosen books, the handmade rugs, the simple, welcoming decor. Everything had been curated with care, like someone had tried to make this a home for someone who never came. And though she didn't yet know Victor's past, she could feel it in the walls. This place had once held love and loss. By morning, Harper had decided to leave. She'd accept the hospitality for one night, no more. It wasn't safe to rely on kindness. She'd learned that the hard way. But when she stepped outside with Leo bundled in her arms, planning to walk to the nearest bus station, Victor was already waiting by the path, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You were going to sneak off without breakfast?" he asked, eyebrows raised. Harper froze. "I didn't want to overstay." He extended a coffee. "You didn't stay for breakfast, then decide." She hesitated, then took the cup. The smell of sizzling eggs and warm toast drifted through the kitchen of the main house. Harper sat stiffly at the breakfast bar. Leo perched beside her, swinging his legs, eyes wide at the sight of bacon piled high on a ceramic plate. Victor moved quietly, with the confidence of someone used to doing things alone. "Is this normal for you?" Harper asked, glancing around the open-concept kitchen, where sun filtered through large windows overlooking a manicured garden. "Cooking?" Victor replied without looking up. "No, not in a long time." Harper didn't press. She understood the weight behind words left unsaid. She cut Leo's food into small bites and tried to ignore how natural this morning felt, like a page from someone else's life. A life where mornings were warm, kitchens were full, and people smiled over coffee. "Leo likes it here," Harper said quietly. "But we can't stay." Victor served her a fresh cup of coffee and sat across from her. "You don't have to explain, but you should know there's no rush. You can stay as long as you need." Harper frowned. "You don't even know us." Victor met her gaze. "That's true, but I've been alone in this house for a long time, Harper. Too long. Maybe having someone here, even for a little while, might be good for both of us." His words landed softly like a blanket pulled over cold shoulders. Later, while Leo played with a toy truck Victor had found in storage, Harper wandered the hallway lined with family portraits. One in particular caught her eye. A smiling woman with dark curls and a little girl in pigtails. The woman's eyes mirrored Victor's. She heard him approach behind her. "My wife, Alina, and our daughter, Claire. The house has been quiet since the accident." Harper turned, instinctively placing a hand over her chest. "I'm sorry." He nodded. "It's been 2 years, but some days it still feels like yesterday." For a long moment silence stretched between them. Not awkward but reverent. A shared space of grief and quiet understanding. That afternoon, Harper unpacked their single bag in the guest house, just in case, and when Leo asked if they could stay just a little longer, she whispered, "Maybe." The days that followed settled into an unexpected rhythm. Morning sunlight flooded the guest house, where Harper found herself waking up before Leo to sip coffee on the porch. It was quiet in a way that didn't feel empty. For the first time in a long while it felt safe. Victor kept his distance at first. He worked from his home office, held conference calls in the study, and rarely left the estate, yet every evening he made a point to check in. Sometimes it was a polite knock at the guest house door with warm food in hand. Other times it was a casual walk through the garden where he'd offer her company without pressure. Harper learned quickly that he wasn't like most wealthy men. He didn't brag, didn't flaunt, and never asked questions he wasn't willing to answer himself. He was guarded, but not cold. Still, Harper wrestled with her own fears. She had fled an abusive relationship months ago. Leo's father had left scars that couldn't be seen, ones that whispered to her that trusting another man, any man, was foolish. Even now, as Victor showed her nothing but respect and gentleness, she couldn't stop the voice in her head from warning her it's too good to be true. One evening, Harper sat by the fireplace while Leo napped and Victor joined her for tea. They spoke in fragments, about books, music, things they'd once loved before life pulled them under. Then a question slipped through the quiet. "Why were you out there, that night?" Victor asked gently. Harper stared into the flames. "I was trying to get Leo somewhere safe. I'd lost our room at the shelter. I thought I had one more night, but they said we'd reached our limit." Victor's jaw clenched. "They turned you away in the rain," Harper nodded. "You don't get special treatment when you're poor, and I couldn't go back to my ex. I'd rather sleep under a bridge." Victor didn't speak right away, but his eyes, stormy and still, held hers. "You're stronger than you know," he said. And Harper, who had spent so long hiding her bruises both visible and invisible, felt something shift inside. Maybe it wasn't trust yet, but it was the beginning of something like it. Leo had always been a quiet child. He'd learned early on that silence kept him safe, But in the peaceful surroundings of Victor's estate, something began to shift in him too. The bruises on his heart, invisible like his mother's, started to fade with every laugh that echoed through the wide halls, every warm meal that ended with dessert, and every evening he spent running barefoot through the garden. Victor noticed it first. One afternoon he found Leo crouched by the koi pond near the guest house, carefully feeding the fish with a handful of pellets. The boy was humming softly, lost in his world. Victor stood nearby silently watching. "You like them?" Victor finally asked. Leo nodded. "They're not scared of me." Victor crouched beside him. "Why would they be?" Leo shrugged. "Some people just are." Victor looked at him for a long moment before gently saying, "People are often scared of what they don't understand, Leo. But those fish, they see kindness." It was a simple exchange, but Harper watched from the kitchen window and felt her throat tighten. Victor wasn't just being polite, he was present, consistent. And Leo was beginning to trust him in a way Harper hadn't seen him trust anyone. Not even teachers or caregivers. Later that day, Harper found Leo drawing a picture with crayons Victor had bought for him. Something so small but thoughtful. The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands. A tall man, a woman with long brown hair, and a little boy between them. "That's you, me, and Mr. Victor," Leo explained casually. Harper sat beside him and tried to smile, but her heart was racing. It was too soon. They weren't a family. Victor wasn't staying in their lives. This was all temporary, wasn't it? That night, after putting Leo to bed, Harper walked to the main house to thank Victor for the art supplies. "I think he's starting to love this place," she said, her voice soft, almost afraid. Victor nodded, pouring them both a cup of tea. "He deserves to love something." "So do you." Harper blinked back tears. No one had ever said that to her before. Not like that. And even though she wanted to tell herself not to get too comfortable, a part of her, one she'd buried long ago, was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had found something worth staying for. One crisp morning, as golden leaves drifted across the estate grounds, Harper received a call from a blocked number. She almost didn't answer, but instinct took over. Her heart dropped the moment she heard the voice on the other end. "Thought you could run forever?" sneered the low, grating tone. "You think hiding in some rich man's house makes you safe?" It was Darren, Leo's father. The man Harper had spent the last year trying to escape. Her hands trembled, her breath caught. She hung up immediately, her fingers shaking so hard she nearly dropped the phone. Panic surged through her veins. Everything she'd built in the last few weeks, the peace, the safety, the warmth, it suddenly felt fragile, like a dream easily shattered. Harper rushed to the window, scanning the driveway, half expecting him to be there already. Victor found her in that state moments later, crouched in a corner of the guest house, clutching Leo's favorite toy to her chest. "What happened?" he asked gently, kneeling beside her. Harper didn't answer right away. Her walls were crumbling and she was terrified of what telling the truth would cost, but Victor's presence, steady, unflinching, felt like an anchor. "I think he found us," she whispered. Victor's jaw tightened. "Who?" "My ex. He used to hurt me. He doesn't care about Leo, not really, but he doesn't want to let us go either. He's dangerous." Victor stood slowly, his voice calm but filled with steel. "You and Leo are safe here. I'll make sure of it." Harper looked up at him, blinking through tears. "I shouldn't have come here. I've put you in danger." But Victor shook his head. "You didn't bring danger. You brought honesty, and something worth protecting." That evening, Victor called a security firm. Cameras were installed around the estate. The gate code was changed. He even hired a quiet, observant guard named Elias who began watching the property from dusk till dawn. Harper felt the walls closing in again, but this time they weren't barriers. They were shields, not traps, but protection. Still, she couldn't shake the fear. What if her presence cost Victor everything? What if Leo got caught in the middle? Fear has a strange way of resurrecting old habits. That night, Harper packed a small bag quietly while Leo slept. She couldn't risk Victor's life or Leo's safety because of her past. She scribbled a short note, left it on the guest house table, and gently kissed her son's forehead. Her plan was to take a bus before sunrise, vanish again like she had so many times before. But as she reached the gate, she froze. Victor stood there, leaning against the post, his breath visible in the cold morning air. "You were going to leave without saying goodbye?" he asked, his voice low. Harper clutched her bag tighter. "I don't belong here, Victor. You're trying to protect something that can't be fixed. I'm not safe. I come with baggage and risk." Victor stepped forward. "We all have baggage, Harper. But running won't make it lighter." "I don't want to hurt you," she whispered. "And I don't want you to disappear," he replied. She wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes, soft, resolute, wounded, disarmed her. "You're not a problem to fix," he continued. "You and Leo are part of a solution I didn't know I needed." Tears streamed down Harper's face as Victor gently took the bag from her hand and led her back inside. In the following days, Harper tried to stay, really stay. She cooked breakfast with Leo, cleaned the guest house with care, and slowly opened herself to the rhythm of a life she never believed she could have. She still flinched at loud noises, still hesitated when Victor knocked. But trust began to grow. Victor, on his part, never pushed. He became a steady presence, always showing up, always consistent. He took Leo fishing in the pond and taught him how to bait a hook. He shared books with Harper, left them on her porch with a note about which chapters he liked best. They never labeled what was happening between them. There was no need. It was in the lingering looks, the laughter shared over dinner, the silence that no longer felt awkward. One afternoon, Leo tugged at Victor's shirt and asked, "Are you my new dad now?" Victor paused. "I'm someone who cares a lot about you and your mom. Does that count?" Leo smiled. "It does to me." Harper overheard from the hallway. She leaned against the wall and let the tears come, not out of fear but out of gratitude. Victor never spoke about his company. Harper knew he was wealthy, but she had no idea he was the CEO of Langston International, one of the most powerful tech firms on the East Coast. He had built an empire, then disappeared from the public eye after losing his family. He'd wanted silence, solitude, a retreat from a world that demanded too much. But Harper and Leo had brought noise and warmth back into his life. It wasn't until a curious Leo Googled Victor's full name for a school project that Harper learned the truth. "He's famous, Mommy," Leo exclaimed. "He's on the internet." Harper stared at the screen in disbelief. Headlines flashed. "Victor Langston vanishes after tragedy, the tech genius who walked away." That night she confronted him. "You're a billionaire?" she asked, still reeling. Victor shrugged. "I didn't want that to matter, and you let me stay here. Even when I had nothing to offer, you offered honesty. And your presence. That was everything." Harper sat down beside him. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted you to see me, not my bank account." She took his hand. "I do." Harper's fears materialized one quiet evening. While Leo was inside coloring, a figure approached the gate. The security camera pinged. Victor looked up from the porch, narrowing his eyes as he recognized the man. It was Darren. Victor stepped out alone, voice calm but firm. "You need to leave." "I want my son," Darren growled. "And I want her to pay for taking him." "She doesn't belong to you," Victor replied. "I'll get the courts involved. She can't hide here forever." Victor didn't flinch. "You're trespassing. I suggest you turn around before my legal team gets involved," Darren sneered. "You're just a rich puppet. She'll run from you too." Victor didn't respond. Instead, he pulled out his phone and called the police. Darren was escorted off the property an hour later. When Harper found out, she broke down. "I should have warned you. I'm so sorry." Victor held her gently. "You don't owe me an apology. You owe yourself peace, and we'll find it together." The confrontation had changed things. Victor offered Harper and Leo the guest house for as long as they needed it, permanently, if they wished. But he didn't want to pressure her. "It's your choice," he said. Harper smiled through tears. "No one's ever given me a choice before." They redecorated the space together. Leo painted his room blue. Harper started working part-time for one of Victor's nonprofits, a program that helped women rebuild after domestic abuse. She was finally healing, not just surviving. One evening, after tucking Leo into bed, Harper and Victor sat on the porch under the stars. "You've given me more than I ever thought possible," Harper whispered. Victor reached for her hand. "You've given me something too, a reason to live again." They kissed that night, gentle, hesitant, full of emotion. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. They didn't rush into anything. Love had arrived slowly, but it had arrived fully. Months later, while decorating the Christmas tree, Victor pulled Harper aside. In his hand, a small velvet box. Harper gasped. "I don't want to save you, Harper. I just want to stand beside you. Will you marry me?" Leo watched from the couch, his eyes wide with joy. Harper nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The wedding was simple. A backyard ceremony under fairy lights. Just close friends, a few employees, and Elias the security guard officiating. Leo walked Harper down the aisle. They exchanged vows written from the heart. Victor promised to honor not only Harper but the journey that brought her to him. Harper promised to love without fear and to never run again. Married life was not a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. There were hard days, of course. But there was laughter over breakfast, lazy Sundays in the garden, and movie nights with popcorn and Leo in the middle. Victor taught Harper about investments. Harper taught Victor how to make pancakes without burning them. Leo taught them both how to be a family. Harper eventually began sharing her story publicly, speaking at shelters and recovery centers, helping other women find strength in their struggle. Victor supported her at every event. "You were never just surviving," she told her audience. "You were becoming." And in those moments, Harper no longer saw herself as broken. She saw herself as brave. 1 year after they met, Harper stood with Victor and Leo at the very same bus stop where it all began. It was raining again. But this time there were no tears, no fear, just gratitude. Victor kissed her forehead. "We found each other on the worst night of our lives," Harper smiled, "and it became the best thing that ever happened." The guest house became a nursery after Harper and Victor welcomed a new baby girl named Grace. The mansion was no longer a retreat for grief, but a home full of joy. Victor never returned fully to the public eye, but he didn't need to. His legacy wasn't his company, it was his family. And for Harper, love didn't save her, it chose her. And she chose it back. Thank you for following this incredible journey of healing, hope, and second chances. If this story moved you, touched your heart, or gave you hope, don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us all that love can be found in the most unexpected places.